Thanks, Octavian. How would I do without you? Okay, thanks. Okay, so with the discussants, we will, sorry, I was saying, so the You Can Do It petition, the manifesto for the European Health Union, and the former EU commissioners Violeta Bulc and Vytenis Andriukaitis, who hopefully we will get back from the main room, will present this proposal. And there will be Rajesh Khalale, who is the executive director of New Europeans. And we also have with us Julie Stendham from the committee of a new European Citizen Initiative, Right to Cure, which is very pertinent to the needs of access to vaccines. And Marco Perduca and Marco Cappato from Science for Democracy and Humans with us. But how all of this is contextualized? We cannot not start from the perspective of the rule of law and what can be done for democracy in the European Union. So to give a bit of context to our debate, it's worth mentioning that on the 2nd of December, Commissioner Jourova presented the Democracy Action Plan, which includes also some important elements around the relevance of participatory democracy and civic activation for a healthier democracy within the European Union. So this is an element of context that is important to take in mind. The second element is around the role of European citizen assemblies. As I was saying in the introduction earlier, there is a dedicated panel starting at 6:30 on this matter, but I think when we talk about the activation of participatory democracy instruments, also in the context of health reforms and EU reforms, we cannot ignore this element that will be an important addition in the functioning of the participatory democracy instruments within the European Union. So how it will work tonight, we will have a series of presentations from our discussants, and then there will be open space for all of us to discuss the input that will bring up to the table to try and find a concrete action or a series of concrete actions that we, within the context of Citizens Take Over Europe, can carry on together to inject these topics in the Conference on the Future of Europe, whether it will start officially or whether if we need to consider self-organized start. As organizers of these panels, we strongly believe that the element of the rule of law is the foundation of everything that happens in the European Union. And also the rule of law was at the center of the negotiation process between the member states and within the council, mainly for the discussion on the recovery plan, which is the foundation of everything that needs to be done at this stage. So for this purpose, I invite as the first person to speak, Professor Ramona Kroman, Associate Professor of Political Science at ULB in Brussels, to give us the latest insights in light of the latest unfolding of the European debate around the rule of law matter, and try to help us to contextualize everything that we will discuss tonight with the lenses of the rule of law and the role of citizens in the fight for a stronger rule of law in the European Union. So welcome, Professor Kroman, and the floor is yours. If she is with us. She's not. Okay, so while we wait for Professor Kroman, sorry, of course, technical problems.
Sorry, can I ask you breakout room about European Health Union? Is A, B, or C?
Is A, you are now in the right one, but we missed the first speaker.
I am in the right one, yes.
Yes,
in
you are,
okay.
But I see we are missing some of the other. Okay, sorry, there is a bit of problem in joining the breakout rooms, and so we miss some of the speakers. Okay, if you can wait here 1 second, I'm gonna leave and come back to help to find the missing participants. Apologies for the inconvenience to all of you. So we missed some of the speakers of the country.
I'm here. I'm so sorry, I don't have the possibility to select a breakout room.
Yeah. Okay, so particularly for Professor Coman, Julie, and the rest, you might need to download the latest version of Zoom, and this might be the reason why you can't do it. So
I'm sorry, Virginia, I don't have the option to download Zoom on this computer. Could you like add me manually to the session?
Let's try. I'm gonna make
Virginia, could you please make me host?
Yes,
because
I'm doing it. Yes, doing it right now.
If it would be possible, Virginia, I would like to be in session B, so can you add me, please?
Yes.
Yes.
So Sunduz is gonna do that.
You forgot to make me host before you left.
I did. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Okay, so now you are.
Okay.
And maybe we can prioritize. I help you with the speakers of my session, so they are there.
Okay, now I can put. Wait.
Yes.
1 second. I think.
Okay. Now I can't do anymore. Soon as I'm writing here, those that needs to be in A for the council.
Someone pointed an idea earlier in the chat that was quite wise. They said if they could you all update your names quickly with the breakout room, so A, B, C, right at the beginning of your name, so that I can assign you quickly. That was a good idea. Actually, Julie, you already did that. Thank you. So I'm going to move you right now to the breakouts. Bye. Thank you so much for your patience. And thanks for the idea. Great.
Sunduz, can you please put Ramona Coman? I put 2 names in the chat that needs to be, and Julie send them. They need to be in the.
Okay.
Because they're speakers. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's done. There.
Hard negotiation, but successful.
Okay, so it was more complicated than expected. And
See you later.
Okay, so we have Professor Coman. Apologies to all the attendees for the hiccups. It's getting more complicated every time. So Professor Coman, you missed my introduction, but I think the key thing is, can you help us to put in light of the rule of law context what happened with the recovery plan, but also what the debate around the rule of law kind of unveiled about the functioning of the European Union itself and where we are right now with this matter. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you very, very much for the invitation, and sorry for the delay. So, I was invited to talk a bit about the evolution of the debates about the rule of law conditionality. And as we all know, the European Council last meeting put an end to the Hungarian and the Polish blockade, as the 2 governments were opposed to the link between the payments of European funds to the respect of the rule of law. So since Poland and Hungary lifted their vetoes, now EU institutions are finalizing the procedures for the adoption of the multi-annual financial framework for 21-27 and the recovery package. And this is an excellent news for all the countries struggling with serious economic challenges to overcome the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is, of course, an excellent opportunity, as the EU has finally financial capacity to deal with the climate and digital transition, but also to support citizens which are affected by the COVID pandemic, and member states will have the means to overcome the social and economic crisis. So the conclusions of the Council help to adopt a set of very important decisions. I would just mention the most important, the three very important decisions, which are the acts concerning EU's own resource decision, which defines how the EU budget is financed. And this should be approved now by all 27 member states in accordance to their constitutional provisions. So these decisions about own resources allows to raise the maximum amount of resources and also gives to the Commission this very important possibility. It authorizes the Commission to, on an exceptional basis, to borrow 750 billion euros on capital markets to address the consequences of the COVID pandemic. And two other important decisions which are linked to the previous one is the establishment of the European Union recovery instrument, and then the one which is about rule of law conditionality is the adoption of the general regime of conditionality for the protection of the EU budget. So as we know, the three decisions that I just mentioned about own resources, European Union recovery instrument, and this regulation on a general regime of conditionality had been adopted by the Council, and tomorrow morning the Parliament will vote, as the Parliament should give its consent on the MFF, and the Parliament has to vote also on the regulation concerning conditionality. So this is about the positive side of these sets and the outcomes of the European Council. Another positive aspect about this package of rules is that the new general regime on conditionality for the protection of the interests of the EU budgets brings an important aspect, an important element, in the sense that it allows to adopt sanctions and to suspend the payments of European funds in the event of non-compliance with the rule of law. So this regulation allows to do this by a qualified majority voting, while we know that in the Article 7 procedure, we have this requirement for unanimity. So this is another important step and a positive aspect in this set of regulation. But there are also some discussions, because as we know, in order to find a solution accepted both by Poland and Hungary, the European Council adopted this interpretative declaration, this very important document, 4 pages for the rule of law debate. And this document contains an important provision about the link between funds and the respect of the rule of law, which link and provision which was discussed and commented by Alberto Alemano. I suppose he's with us in this panel, so probably he would like to explain this provision. So the interpretative declaration of the European Council raises some questions, because the European Council added some new elements. And this element is that the Commission should adopt some guidelines on the way it will apply this regulation, including a methodology for the assessments. And what this interpretative declaration also says is that should an action for annulment be introduced with regard to the regulation, the guidelines will be finalized after the judgment of the Court of Justice. So the Commission will not propose measures under the regulation until such guidelines are finalized. So this means that concretely, it means that for some governments, this is a way to delay the application of the regulation, to delay it, and also for the governments concerned is a way to buy time, to have more time as they all prepare for next elections at the domestic level, in both in Poland and in Hungary. So this is now the discussion that we have at the European level. On the one hand, we know that the European Council conclusions are not legally binding. On the other hand, as I said before, Alberto Alemano published for Verfassung, I think, publication, a commentary saying that the decision of the Council has de facto drafted, amended the legislative act, this regulation concerning conditionality. So there is this debate about the nature and the implication of this interpretative declaration of the Council, delaying a bit the application, delaying its application. We have a debate in the Parliament, and probably we will know more tomorrow morning. The Parliament saying that the Commission can gather the concrete elements and start its act, considering that this is not legally binding. On the other hand, the President of the Commission said that it will take time to adopt the guidelines that the European Council is mentioning. So, as I said, for the two governments, this is a way to save, to have more time, while we know that important things are happening as we speak. There are developments in the two countries which put in danger the rule of law and also democracy and fundamental rights. So there are several steps forward, but on the other hand, we see also the possibility to delay the application and the use of this regulation. I don't want to be too long. I don't know, Virginia, if there are other questions that I can discuss with you, but this is for the moment the situation. So the final vote will be tomorrow morning in the Parliament, as we know.
Thank you. Just one practical note for those of you who are not talking, if you can turn off your microphones so there is a bit less background noise. The functionality is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So there is a comment from Esther Nagy from the European Federalists in Hungary that is drawing the line between the elections and this decision-making process. Maybe my question before going to the next speaker is if you need to evaluate from a public sphere perspective, but also the relationship between the citizens and the immediate needs that they have around the recovery plan, what it means, this situation, if we can look at it positively or negatively. It sounds very complicated for a normal citizen. So what's your perspective of the unlocking of the recovery plan somehow, and also the impact on the daily life of the European citizens, just to put it really practically?
Well, this is an opportunity for the European Union, as I said at the beginning. So it allows member states to really help and create action and support citizens affected by the COVID pandemic. But it also depends on how all of this will be translated into concrete activities and concrete measures. And here, member states play a very, very important role. So my question would be to see, for example, how Viktor Orban, who sees this plan now as a victory for Budapest, and also Prime Minister, the Polish Prime Minister, as a victory for his country. So how they will translate and they will use this money, considering that they have the possibility to delay the application of this rule of law regulation conditionality, that it will take time to have a judgment from the Court of Justice, and again, time for the Commission to assess the situation on the ground. So I really liked what Calypso Nicolaidis, I think, said at the beginning, and also this idea of trying to empower citizens. I saw, but of course, I suppose there are other experts in this panel. I saw, for example, mobilizations at domestic level in Hungary, but also in Poland, asking EU institutional actors to implement this regulation and conditionality as soon as possible. So petitions and action in support of the rule of law conditionality. So I think this is already a concrete step forward, and it helps, of course, to give support to this mechanism and at the domestic level, not only at the European level.
Thank you very much. So hopefully you will stay with us for the entire length of the session. And I think as we go through the other speakers, we can also try to identify maybe some concrete points of action that can be activated to this through the network that is Citizens Take Over Europe and the instruments that already had been activated and can be activated. So in this light, I will give the floor now to Marco Cappato, who is the president of Humans, but also was a former MEP, so he has the perspective of how it is working within the European Parliament in this type of situations. And Marco, I think what it will be very interesting to start and focus is on the health reforms and what is the opportunity, health and not only health, the combination of the matter and the instruments available, and also maybe to set the tone for this debate tonight to again try to find concrete actions.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. Good evening to everybody. Thank you to Citizens Take Over Europe Coalition and for this opportunity of speaking at the Council for Participatory Democracy. On the rule of law issue, just a quick point on that. I think it's also very important for civil society to interact with the permanent monitoring made by the European Commission about the situation of the rule of law, not only in Hungary and Poland, but all over Europe. The most recent is the most recent report from the European Commission is of a couple of months ago. And I think it's very important to interact because monitoring is also a way of put pressure on a government, not just the final sanction. The final sanction is the final outcome, but there are steps that we can do before. Talking about health, I think this is a crucial issue linked to the introduction of the meeting of tonight from Niccolò Milanese, because he was talking about a citizens-led conference of Europe. And health, of course, during the pandemic crisis is a key issue to be discussed, both in the conference on the future of Europe, if it will be convened, both in the citizens-led that we can try to build together. Health emergency has restricted the democratic public space, starting from the marginalization of parliaments. It has been even worse for participatory democracy. The indeterminate suspension of the Conference on the Future of Europe is an example at the European level. In Italy, for example, the constitutional right to propose civic legislative proposals or referendums has been suspended de facto since last March, because it's impossible to collect signature in the streets, and there is no way for doing it in a digital format, in a digital way. But democracy and participation are needed to foster the collective mobilization for the right to health and well-being, especially at the European level, to promote sharing of resources, sharing of experiences, sharing of data. Even though as an immediate response to the COVID-19 outbreak, the EU has activated and broadened the EU civil protection mechanism and the rescue reserve. In the long term, the European Union has been failing to address the COVID-19 health crisis in a coordinated way. In fact, the majority of basic decisions concerning wearing masks, quarantine rules, limit on social gatherings, or the closure of schools and businesses remain a prerogative of national and local health authorities. But even the information upon which those choices are made are not shared as a criteria. So it is now fundamental that EU leaders manage to coordinate at least the gradual lifting of restrictions or vaccination plans or vaccination certificates, as well as the mutual recognition of test results. So in this context, we should welcome the European Commission's proposal for an European Health Union. But of course, you have the title, and then you need to see what you can get into it in very concrete terms. Both Chancellor Merkel and EU leaders acknowledged the greater formal EU cooperation on healthcare matters and health data sharing are needed, but how, what we should do. Of course, there is also this European Citizen Initiative that will be presented later on, I guess, on the right to access to the vaccination. And this is a key element from the political and also health point of view for the coming months. The former president of the European Medical Agency, Dr. Razi, proposed to establish an online platform for clinical trials in Europe, as well as a network for rapid evaluation of the vaccine effectiveness. So I think this proposal could also be pushed forward. The EU and its member states should take stock of the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic to make healthcare and civil protection concurrent competencies of the EU. And of course, for doing this, you need also treaty changes. We know how difficult it is, but the question should be raised. So which action we can take toward this end? I think that putting pressure for the convening of the Conference on the Future of Europe, having health policies on the top of the agenda is crucial. We need to gather even more support to the petition launched by Citizens Takeover Europe on this regard. Being ready, as Niccolò Milanese said at the beginning, to convene a citizens-led self-organized conference if EU institution will fail to do so, and in any case, it would be a parallel event and tool very useful to put pressure to decision maker on that direction, starting from the issue of protecting health of EU citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco Cappato. There are some comments in the chat, so I invite all the discussants to have a look, and we will then have, of course, space for also other debates with other participants. But now it's time to give the floor to Vytenis Andriukaitis, who was the former EU Commissioner for Health. So it's probably the one that has the best knowledge of where it was, the European Union before the pandemic, where we are now, and also is one of the supporters and creators of a manifesto for a European Health Union, or for a European Health Union. So I would like to ask Mr. Andriukaitis to present the proposal that the manifesto includes and try to tie that to what Professor Coma explained about the context of the decision-making process, and also what Marco Cappato suggested about the immediate needs, and try to help us to contextualize and maybe identifying points of urgency where we can act now, and points of long-term or maybe adequate pressure on the Conference on the Future of Europe could help as well.
Okay, dear Virginia, how many minutes do I have? 5, 7, 3?
10 hours. No, I'm joking. I think 5 to 7 minutes to kick off the
5 to 7. Okay, okay. Thanks a lot for the invitation, dear colleagues. Because I like very much such ideas. The citizens take over Europe. you know, but we're always asking, how can we bring EU closer to citizens? In one hand, in another, all citizens are thinking about situation where Europe is, because they don't know what does it mean European Union. They see that some institutions and bureaucracy, something is very strange, European Union, but they do not see it closer to their hearts. And health is exactly the topic which is so close to citizens' hearts. And of course, I always argue about possibilities of Europe in my pocket. It means that when I have my ID card, when I have my driving license, when I have some you know very important elements in my life, I know that it will be good to have also European health insurance card in my pocket. Can you imagine? It will be really excellent idea to understand that health is also matter of European Union. But may I try to a little bit to go into a history of how European Health Union was evolved. You know that now COVID pandemic revealed limits of preparedness to mitigate negative impact on health emergencies on people health and living standards, on economic growth, employment, fiscal balances, international trade, free movement of people. And of course, the EU now is at crossroads to respond to health, economic, and social crisis. It can choose to continue doing business as usual with some improvements of today's tools as we see now, or it can take on more responsibility by strengthening the treaties in the field of health at the EU level. How can we, drawing lessons from the current crisis, create a resilient EU that can move forward with confidence and vitality, keeping in mind people's health, well-being, and quality of life? Now we should understand that it is a main issue. We can change paradigm. People's health, well-being, and quality of life is important. And you know, each health crisis, as BC, SARS, Ebola, has added a health policy layer and created new institutions. So in the face of this crisis, we need to take forward the call for new European Union competencies in the field of health, as well as appreciation of how many other areas of EU policy impact health, so that both form an important part of the forthcoming conference on the future of Europe to be held next year. The fact that a term, a European Health Union, was coined in spring 2020, and a few months later catapulted to the rank of official EU policy. It is important that it was coined by people. In her first annual State of the European Union address, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that coronavirus pandemic had underlined the need for closer cooperation in health. For me, it's crystal clear. We need to build a strong European Health Union, she said. But what does it mean? She didn't explain it. Till now, Commission is proposing step-by-step, first building block, second step related to pharmaceutical strategy, first was related to cross-border health threats, but it is not, it goes in very narrow approach. And unfortunately, until recently, European policy was somehow disregarding health-related values of its residents. Most of health-related matters are considered by the EU exclusively as business of member states or markets. Until COVID-19, health remained a minor topic in the European treaties, in the European semester, or the EU budget. The EU does not take action, prevails against, unless it is more effective than action taken at national, regional, or local level. This is how, in usual everyday practice, subsidiarity principle and role of the EU in health is interpreted. And it is very, very, like to say, very narrow approach. And we can change situation profoundly, because Eurobarometer indicates clear preference of European citizens to do more for health. And I would like to highlight some suggested features of the future European Health Union. First, the role of health policy in the European treaties will be reconsidered and strengthened. The objectives to keep in mind are more proactive and preventive health, more solidarity in public health instruments and activities in Europe, more cooperation to build resilient healthcare and cure systems within member states. No longer will laws with important consequences for health be adopted as part of the European Union's market building objectives on the Article 141. It's strange that our single market face prevails against public health issues. Second, there will be sufficient capacity to safeguard EU solidarity, as when there are shortages of medical supplies simultaneously facing many member states. The EU will be empowered in some areas to ensure centralized distribution of emergency medicines and also medicines related to rare diseases or rare cancers and supplies based on medical needs. We need to do it at EU level because many member states can't do it. It is impossible. Third, cross-border healthcare directive is not enough. We need the EU to share responsibilities in care and cure in areas of rare cancers and rare diseases, while preserving subsidiarity as a core principle. We need the European Health Insurance Fund to cover rare diseases and rare cancers, and to assure that the pledge no one is left behind is a reality in Europe. None of the European countries alone is capable to assure universal health coverage for all up to 30 million European patients suffering from rare diseases. Only European Health Union can do it. And as you know, we proposed 3 scenarios in our manifesto to debate with public. Scenario A, measures to make progress in health concentrate on what can be done with existing legal, financial, and managerial instruments, upgrading already functioning institutions, and improving implementation of already agreed policies. Scenario B, fine-tuning of existing instruments of health policy in parallel to the development of secondary legislation and establishment of new institutions that can create added value for European health. The scenario does not foresee amendments to the European Treaty, but scenario C, Europeans decide that in addition to A or B, scenario C is needed, where the status of health policy in the European treaties is strengthened with provisions for a European Health Union incorporated into the Treaty on European Union, giving the European Union some competence in health policy in very concrete areas, while preserving the principle of subsidiarity as a core. The manifesto is calling European leaders to consider scenario C, the most ambitious one. As you see, Council of Health of Ministers, it was on 2nd of December, presented strong support to the development of European Health Union according to the path similar to scenario A, with some elements of scenario B. This is, of course, some progress in comparison on the political trajectory that prevailed just 1 year ago, but it is not enough. And we are proposing now to organize broad debates about our manifesto, about our all instruments, about our all proposals. How can we really encourage citizens' debate about the need to strengthen the Treaty on European Union? Just I can, final sentence. If you look at the Treaty on European Union, Article 2, because it's a basic treaty, Article 2, Part 3, I just read it. The Union shall establish an internal market. It shall work for the sustainable development of Europe based on balanced economic growth and price stability, a highly competitive social market economy aiming at full employment and social progress, and high level of protection and improvement of the quality of the environment. It shall promote scientific and technological advance. Point. My proposal is to amend one sentence. It shall promote universal health coverage by establishing a health union. If we will be capable to discuss concrete proposal, how can we amend treaties, and then how can we amend treaties on functioning of the EU, then we will go into scenario C, and then we will have more strongest capacities to address such crises, address many challenges which are around, and of course to bring health at a high level on the political agenda, and encourage citizens to believe that Europe is closer to their hearts and closer to their pockets, because they feel that health is also a topic which is considered by European policies. It's in short presenting main ideas, but may I ask you, colleagues, may I ask you to sign our, to be signatories of our manifesto. You can go into website, www.europeanhealthunion.eu, and you can find a list of signators and you can sign it, because our idea is to collect signatures as much as possible and to present, maybe to collect signatures and to organize petition that such question about European Health Union should be included into Conference on Future of Europe, and of course it should be included into agendas of national parliaments, governments, and non-governmental organizations. We need broad debates about situation. How can we move forward, keeping in mind possibilities to create a really workable European Health Union? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andriukaitis, for a super passionate and thorough presentation of the Health Manifesto. One of the purposes of this session specifically is to understand also which instruments can be activated. Just to have a midpoint summary, I think on one side, there is the need to discuss together how to boost an existing petition to the European Parliament launched by Citizens Take Over Europe for the Conference on the Future of Europe as an instrument to create that space for this discussion of competencies, new institutions, and some of the proposals that you described could have the space to be discussed. On the other side, I think this platform and the platforms that we are organizing with the coalitions that we are part of is exactly a space to join forces and find the hook for carrying on these proposals. We will have some space later for a second round of intervention, so I'm also interested in the perspective of Professor Coman and Marco Cappato on the matter that are being put on the table. For the participants, we are 50 right now, so welcome again, everyone. For those of you who were waiting for the panel on the citizen assemblies to start, eventually it started in break room B, not because I want to kick you away from this one. I hope you are going to stay, but there are parallel sessions in this event, so be aware that in breakout session B, it's just started the specific panel on European citizen assemblies. There was one of the people in the chat that was saying we should join forces for these type of instruments. That's exactly the point of Citizens Take Over Europe, try to join forces around specific matters, as we are doing with the health topic tonight, but also on specific instruments, for example, the activation and the evolution of European citizen assemblies. Next on stage, we have Rajesh Khalale. He's the Executive Director of New Europeans, which is a strong part of Citizens Take Over Europe, but also a friend of humans, so I'm even double happy to have him with us. And also New Europeans worked on the concept of health union, but also in particular on the need of creating a debate that is pan-European and even more than pan-European on the matter of health. As we are seeing tonight, there are a lot of angles that should be tackled. For some of them, we have the urgency of the management of the pandemic, as Marco Cappato highlighted in relation to trials, data, sharing, research, vaccines. and on other matters, maybe the road is a bit longer. So I asked Rajesh Khalale to introduce to this panel his proposal and also maybe give his perspective from why we need something that goes even beyond the borders of the European Union in itself, and not only because he's British, it happens to be British. So welcome, Roger.
Thank you very much indeed, Virginia. You can hear me okay?
Yes,
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you, Virginia, for the energy you bring to the screen, for being such a champion of the voice of citizens, for bringing us all together. And to the people who've spoken already, to Marco, Vitensis, and Ramona, it's great to see you. I'm looking forward to hearing what Violetta and Julie are going to say, so I don't want to be too long. But it's great to have such a great group together. I'm also delighted to see so many of my colleagues, our team members from New Europeans on the screen, including Maria Laura from Brussels and Giovanni from Rome and Esther from Budapest and Paul from Aarhus and Gerald from near Bonn. And we do work as a team, and that's obviously the way to get things done. And this is a great opportunity that you've created for us, Virginia, for these different organizations and different individuals with their wonderful experience and backgrounds and passions to come together and try and build a team that can, yes, create a European health union. What a wonderful dream that would be. And a year ago, it would have been an impossible dream. I mean, if you Google European Health Union, in the time when Vitensis was the European Health Commissioner between 2014 and 2019, you might find an abstract of a paper by a Dutch academic called Hans Vollard, but not very much else. It's the pandemic that has created really what I would say once in a generation, some people might say once in a lifetime, for deep transformative change in Europe, and we must grasp that. And I think when Ulrika, who I noticed Ulrika Guerreau is on the call, called me and Nicolo and other organizations and had the idea of launching this platform, Citizens Take Over Europe, at the beginning of this year, I don't think we could have imagined the position that we'll be in today, but there is a responsibility on all of us really now, I think, to work together and to try to grasp the opportunities that are there for transformative change. I think Vitensis mentioned the word paradigm shift in how we organize our lives and our society in Europe. And let's hope that there can be a European Health Union. We made our call for a European Health Union. You very kindly referred to that from this platform on the 9th of May. At Citizens Take Over Europe, where we called for a European Health Union, and we've been collecting signatures. We must join forces and collect signatures together on your petition and on Vitensis and ours, and all join forces, and also for an international conference on lessons learned from the pandemic, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But just let me make these 3 points, Virginia, if I may, really to try to stimulate the discussion, because we've had several very detailed and wonderful presentations from which I've learned a lot already, but I'm very curious to know what people on the screen, our colleagues from Europeans and the other organizations that are here have to say, the questions they're going to ask and what they're going to bring to this discussion. Let me make these 3 points. The first point is this, Virginia. If there is to be a European Health Union, and if we're to listen to the statements that have come from Ursula von der Leyen and also from the new Health Commissioner, Stella Kyriakides, there is going to be the European Health Union, whatever we need to decide exactly what that means. But in my view, my first point is this: if there's to be a European Health Union, it has to be a union of citizens. I think we can agree on this. It has to be a union of citizens. And that's not just a question of having a card, or I'd love to see a green card. I must talk to Vitensis about our green card campaign in the pocket of European citizens. It's got to be something that comes from the lived experience of European citizens. Let's remember, we're in the grip of a pandemic where we're asking citizens to change their behavior to protect their health and the health of others. Just imagine what it would be like after the pandemic if we could persuade all citizens in Europe to lose a bit of weight, to do a little bit of exercise, to do something for their health and the health of others. How that would transform healthcare and how that would free up resources for healthcare. What a difference that would be made. So my first point, Virginia, if there's to be a European health union, it has to be a union of the citizens. And that brings me on to my second point, which is this. How do we create a union of citizens? I'm sure, in a sense, we all agree, you know, we're in a pandemic. Health is the thing that we all worry about every day. The potential is there, but how are we going to do it? How are we going to unlock that potential, that change that comes from the citizens themselves, the energy of the citizens? How are we going to bring that to bear? I don't have the answer, Virginia. I'm hoping that I can find some answers, and I'd be interested to know what everybody in this conversation thinks about that. And my third point is, you know, brings to my third point, which is this. To answer the second point, which was my second question, how do we create a union of citizens, a health union of citizens? Well, I think you have to ask the citizens. You have to start with the citizens. We can have interesting conversations with the experts, but when it comes to how people are going to change their lives to help us create this union of health union of citizens, we have to ask them. And that's why this platform and other platforms like it are so important. I'm encouraged, Virginia, by the words of the Health Commissioner, Stella Kyriakides, who was announcing just a few weeks ago that there will be a European Health Union, music to our ears, that she had listened to the citizen. But she didn't say which citizen she'd listened to. And I think sometimes, whether it's at mayoral level or MP level or at commissioner level, we need to name check people. That's why I enjoy name checking you, Virginia, because you deserve credit for the work that you do, and everybody who's leading an organization, involved in organizations on this call, deserves credit. Let's give credit to the people who are doing things. Let's name check them. Let's say who those citizens are, who we are listening to them. And let's learn from each other about how we need to listen to citizens and what we need to do with what they say to us. But I'm very encouraged by the statements that have been made, and the potential is there. I'm also encouraged that, I remember I said we were calling, our call on the 9th of May was not just for European Health Union, but an international conference on healthcare. We need to recognize that, you know, pandemics don't recognize borders, and the way we organize healthcare can't organize borders. We need to, if we're going to have a European Health Union, it has to be a union of citizens, and it has to be something that's in a global context, that we need to work internationally to develop the vaccines, to develop the healthcare and the solutions that we need. And that's why I'm delighted that Ursula von der Leyen has picked up that point, and she has called for a European summit on healthcare next year, and there's also going to be a global summit. The international conference that we wanted to call, that we launched the appeal for on the 9th of May, was due to be before the G20 summit this year. Now we want to have this conference before the G20 summit next year, which will take place in Italy. And there's going to be this summit. It's a wonderful opportunity. So are we happy? Can we just sort of pack up and go? No, we're not, because what we want to see in this global summit that will take place before the G20 summit and that will put recommendations to the G20, we want to see a civil society element to that. We want to bring the voice of the citizens in. We don't want just the experts to get together, important that is. We want to hear from the citizens. Remember, it's got to be a union of the citizens, a healthcare union of the citizens. So in that global summit, that WHO global summit next year before the G20, where is the civil society chapter? Another opportunity is the yet to be launched Future of Europe conference, which we've been talking about. Where is going to be the focus on health within that? How can we, those of us here on this call, work together to create an assembly that's going to tap into the energy and experience and the ideas of citizens as we build that conference, that bottom-up conference on the future of Europe? And finally, I noticed Tony Venables is on the call from the ESIT Foundation in Brussels, who just had an excellent conference, their 5th annual conference on European citizenship. In that green card, Vita insists that we want to see in all European citizens' pockets, we need to have an expanded idea of what it means to be a European citizen. And one of the things it should mean to be a European citizen is to have universal access to healthcare. And let's remember also, that it doesn't matter if you're a migrant, a refugee, a third country national, or a citizen of Europe when it comes to protecting public health from the pandemic. We also need access to all residents of Europe to healthcare. And we need an expanded sense of citizenship and identity that takes that into account as well. So it's a big project, the idea of European Health Union. It is a paradigm shift. It's not just about changing healthcare, it's about how our borders work, it's about how our education system works, it's about that green card, that European card that Vitensis talked about, that we need to put in every resident's pocket, not just every citizen's pocket in Europe. And that is how we're going to rise to the challenge and increase the resilience of the Europeans and European society to future pandemics. It's got to be a European health union built by the citizens, for the citizens, with the citizens. And we need to start the conversation right now with them. And Citizens Take Over Europe is a great way to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajesh Khalale, for naming. I have never been named so many times in my life, not even from my mom. So thank you very much for this. But this is really
right, so, and I'll carry on if you don't mind.
No, please. No, but this is really a collective effort, and I think your point on the concept of European citizenship and how it's tied to our right to health and in general to benefit from science. I think it's essential also in deciding the actions that Citizens Take Over Europe can bring forward. And probably, and it's worth to remind also for those of you who joined only now, one of the actions that we already have in place is this petition to the European Parliament on the transparency process of how it's constructed, the Conference on the Future of Europe, and how these should be designed, and probably pushing ourselves towards this Conference on the Future of Europe or another Conference on the Future of Europe is that step that would give more legitimacy to everything that we discuss, and probably is that foundational action where we can then build upon some of the topics that we are discussing tonight. On this combination of the role of the citizens and the matters that we are discussing and the need for a holistic approach, I think the best person to be on stage is Violeta Bulc, former Commissioner of EU Transport, but most importantly, an advocate of a different way to tackle what we need as human beings within the context that we were before, and more important in the context that we are right now. So Violeta Bulc, the stage is yours, and you probably have the best background of all the sessions, so maybe you can tell us a bit more about that as well, I guess.
Thank you very much, Virginia, and thank you for giving me a chance to address you as well, but even more discuss with you. I've been following very much what's going on in the chat, and it's really exciting, the topics that are emerging. And you would ask yourself, of course, what the Commissioner for Transport has to say about health, but I've been actively supporting Vitinis in his efforts. He is the leader of the Manifesto movement, but I really wanted to contribute as much as I can for three major reasons. First of all, as a Commissioner for Transport, I have to say I've been at one point quite frustrated, realizing that we are dramatically as transport contributing to the 400,000 premature deaths in Europe due to the pollution. And when we really went into action, we realized that health pillar is very much pillar, and they don't want to interact, or but not on the Commission's level, but on the member states level, that the ministers that are in charge of health don't want to hear about how they, together with the ministers of transport, can improve the conditions and then share the benefits. Yeah, because if transport makes all the investments and improves lives, then some sort of the budget agreement has to be done in this direction as well. Of course, it was almost impossible to get anybody to talk, but we put the sparkle in, and the topic is in the air, and I'm sure that we will be able to finally address it through activities like this as well. The second reason is that when I was sent to Brussels to serve as a commissioner, my family suffered for 5 years quite a bit because part of my family stayed in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and but they could not keep the local health insurance. So being the kids, being students, they had to pay for all the services, and then I got reimbursed for them in Brussels, which of course, you know, we are the union, for Christ's sake. I mean, how come we cannot transfer such a cards or insurance policies that no matter where you are, you could use it with a card in a, you know, simple way, or at least that I could pay also for their local insurance, but I couldn't. So anyway, I'm not going to go into this, but it was a messy thing. And of course, I was emotionally very much interested in how actually the European health system works and what are their potentials to have a health union like we have in many other areas. And of course, as a citizen, me myself, being a European citizen, a strong European, of course, I want that when European citizens engage and travel and move for work or move for life, that there is a smooth transition, that we don't have that many obstacles. So these three are the elements that keep me interested in this topic. But let me pick up on a couple of things that already Roger said and Bettina's already mentioned, which I liked very much. I do believe that in the overall process of engagement of citizens and on political systems and regulators, there is really missing this sort of participatory democracy phase. Everybody would say, oh no, this will complicate the process even more, it will lengthen the process even more. But with all the digital tools, I think we could do it in a much smoother way, and we can confidently put it either as a pre-phase in every regulatory process, or even later on in the correction phases, that this could be a loop that is added in the process at certain stages. Why is this so important? Because this pandemic showed us that we can react if conditions are right. Roger said, out of despair, right? Health Union was born. Great. I mean, even wrong causes can bring to good results. But what is here missing is this holistic view, because we had to do it fast and we had to do what was really urgently needed, but we didn't do the good job in saying what we need for a sustainable development of the health sector. So if we had citizens in this discussion earlier, I'm sure we would have a much broader holistic framework within which we could still move in the first phase with those three elements that the European Commission proposed, like resilience, and then focusing on cancer care and better pandemic preparedness and available medical and medicines and innovation, and on digital health. But for me, this is just one aspect of the health union. And in the manifesto, with Bettina's leadership, we made this whole thing much broader, and you will find the names like well-being and citizen participation already included in the manifesto, which means we have covered a bit broader aspect. But I got challenged by that, and I was engaged in a couple of citizens dialogues within the eco-civilization talks. And I can tell you already, I was just listening and recording and learning from medical professionals, from participants, from all different professions, saying, no, what's missing is really even broader aspect of health, which should move towards healthcare, bringing human-centric approach, where technology is just a tool, and the communication and the patient-doctor relationship is the key, and the avatars and all other technological gadgets can be very efficiently used, but they only tell the diagnosis and the path. They don't tell in what kind of condition a citizen, a person, a patient is, in order to really determine what is causing the sickness or the disease. And we see globally there are some very interesting projects, like new projects in Canada, already showing with the concrete results what a huge difference the healthcare versus health system can bring in the society. And Bettina can tell you more about that, but because he shared this information with me. But you can see that most of the sick people, they are sick due to the socio-economical reasons. Not due to the viruses or bacteria or whatever, but due to the socially economical reasons. And if we don't accept this as part of the equation also in the healthcare system, then we're not doing much. Yeah, and we have all the data. We have all the data available to create a new matrix, to start looking at the health system on a horizontal level from the patient-centric, people-centric point of view. And then we will see that this kind of moves really create a better quality of life, and everybody can calculate the better quality of life means less expensive state. You know, caring means stronger community sense and collaboration, and means less stress on hospitals and the final stage of the healing process, the acute phase of the healing process. Relationship-based health system means better society. So this is where I see a really strong role of participatory democracy to come in and to broaden the aspect of such a crucial topic as this time is health union. Tomorrow is going to be something else. But Commission reacts because it needs to solve one problem. So it will react fast, and it does a really good job, but it doesn't have time for holistic approach, for holistic view, especially when solutions are created out of despair. So it is the role of us citizens and this participatory democracy to make sure that whenever we have a chance to create something new that is really created in a holistic way, and then with a phased approach, we can manage this kind of view. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Violeta. Also to drawing the line between these topics and the participatory democracy instruments. And to go to this specific point, I'm super happy to have with us within this Council on Participatory Democracy, but also within the Citizens Takeover Europe Network, Julie Sendam. She's part of the Citizens Committee of our newly launched European Citizen Initiative, which is called The Right to Cure. She will tell us more, but I just want to stress, as a co-organizer of a European Citizen Initiative, which is stopglobalwarming.eu against climate change, how important is the pressure that citizens can put with these type of instruments on urgent matters. Climate change is one, health and right to health is another one. So I leave the floor to Julie to present her European Citizen Initiative to this session, but also to try to put that in the context of the pandemic. I don't know if my instinctive question is, were you thinking about an initiative on vaccines and access to vaccines before a vaccine was so needed, or it was a kind of instinctive answer to what the destiny brought to our lives?
I think probably both. So indeed, good evening, everyone. I'm Julie Steendam. You pronounced it really, really well. I'm calling you from Belgium, and I'm the campaign coordinator of the European Citizens Initiative Right to Cure. I just added the link so you can give it a look. I think the European Citizens Initiative tool is one of the best proposals so far, or tools for citizens to have a direct say in European policies. Maybe a quick question for yourself: if you can name 3 European Citizens Initiatives that you might have heard of in the last 10 years, or since 2012, since the principle of European Citizens Initiatives has started. You don't have to write it in the chat, just try to think for yourself if you can name 3. Fortunately, can't see your faces, but I guess Virginia already named one, the Global Warming Initiative. There's also the Voters Without Borders one that is also connected to you. Right to Water, exactly, was the very first one to collect the needed 1 million signatures. And I think it has been discussed today in the European Commission. So, which also shows it's kind of a long-term engagement you start. But indeed, the ones, the Right to Cure one that I'm talking about has been launched 2 weeks ago on November 30th on World AIDS Day, and is directed and focusing on the situation we are in right now, which is, of course, the corona pandemic. And it is focusing on or demanding the European Commission to put everything in place to make sure that new developed vaccines, treatments, technologies to fight the coronavirus are not limited in accessibility, affordability, distribution due to intellectual property rights. This is a call that has been made by lots of civil society organizations, scientists, public health experts, and citizens globally. It's also a thing that the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen promised herself in the beginning of the crisis, when the European Commission committed to giving or investing lots of public funds in the development of these vaccines. She also stated that the vaccine should be a public common good. But as of today, now that we impressively have those vaccines, we see that those world common public good principle is kind of left behind, and that we are once again in a much more profit-oriented, even nationalistic competency between continents, countries to get a hold on those vaccines, and that we don't have any public transparency whatsoever on production costs, clinical data, or even the final price of the vaccines. So that's why we started this initiative. So for people that are familiar with it, the basic idea is that you can introduce legislative proposals directly to the European Commission, and that you need to collect 1 million signatures for them to discuss your proposal. So it's a direct way to engage in the legislative action of the European Commission. I think it's a very important principle. I think for lots of campaigners, besides, of course, reaching your goal and discussing your proposal in the parliamentary session or in any commission, it's also a way of campaigning. I want to make clear that for us, we actually really have the goal to reach those signatures and get the proposal accepted. But talking about European citizenship and campaigning, the Citizens Initiative is a very good tool to bring together European civil society organizations and show that there are lots of common interests cross-border over different member states. And of course, having access to those safe vaccines at a low cost, fastest way possible is one of those. So I guess this is already one of the good examples that exist now concerning pan-European democracy and ways of campaigning. So we only started now, 2 weeks ago. We launched this with a coalition of over 90 civil society organizations. Humans is one of them, for which I'm very grateful, Science for Democracy as well. And in the meantime, we collected nearly 14,000 signatures. So that's why I'm dropping the link in the chat as well for you to add your signature, check out the demands, and also to give it more visibility. So, but connected to the European Health Union that we were talking about, our initiative is mainly focusing on the competencies the European Union already has connected to the access to vaccines, the sponsoring of the development, the scientific parts, and also its competencies regarding trade and intellectual property rights. So we're not necessarily advocating for more European competencies. Maybe some of our members are, but it's mainly also a way or to spread awareness amongst EU citizens what exactly is already the power of the European Union and Commission nowadays. Because it has already been mentioned lots of times that health is not a single issue thing. Health is something that is impacted by basically any policy that is being discussed or decided upon at any level. And access to vaccines, the distribution, the procurement, the buying of it is all under European competencies. So I think the European Citizens Initiative really already raises awareness on how important this European level of decision making is. And on the other hand, I think it's also an important way of showing power. I think maybe lots of European citizens, and we can definitely see it, are a bit reluctant to give more competencies to the European Union, because this would also mean or would seem like we give more power to this big level of decision making, and that there's not already a lot of trust in how those things are going right now, mainly also because of a lack of transparency and democracy. And I think this vaccine debate and the way Europe is handling it right now is one of the most important trials or proofs or ways for the European Commission to show that they actually care or prioritize the interest of citizens above other, like say, corporate interests. Because I think this is one of the issues right now, that European Commission seems to be responding much more to corporate interests, companies, private lobby groups advocating their interests, and that European citizens group, civil society, is not getting nearly enough or the same amount of attention or impact in decision making. So I hope, and I'm quite sure that with the initiative that we started, which is advocating for this vaccine to be a public good and any related pharmaceutical treatment to fight this virus, which is necessary to have access to a solution in the fastest way possible, will be respected by the European Commission and will spark debate on whose interests the European Commission is actually defending at the moment. I'll keep it to this for now. Happy to discuss in discussion later on.
Thank you very much, Julie, also for contextualizing the importance of the European Citizen Initiative as one of the instruments that, as transnational activists or citizens, we have available to impact the decision-making process. Therefore, I think what we're trying to do tonight is also to try and combine the methods with the instruments and also see how they can join, transform, innovated. One of the topics also that I think it's important to try to discuss tonight is the right to be informed of the European citizens about the right to participation. Probably around the European Citizen Initiative, not probably, there is a lot to be done in terms of transitioning the investments that are currently done in terms of activating European Citizen Initiative and try to inform more citizens about the fact that they can sign European Citizen Initiatives, but also trying to reason on how the investments that are done around the elections can be balanced, and similar investments should be done in terms of participatory democracy instruments. And the conference on the future itself, on the future of Europe itself, needs to be known by the citizens. Tonight, I don't know how many participants are in the other breakout rooms, so probably around 100, 150 people, which are citizens who care, but how we can expand, what can we ask the institutions to do to have more citizens being aware. So we have a final speaker who is Marco Perduca, co-founder of Science for Democracy. Alberto Alemanno was supposed to be with us, unfortunately, due to some problems with the program and overlapping also on my side. He couldn't make it, but the Good Lobby is part of the Citizens Takeover network, so for sure there will be chances to share also with him the work that we are doing tonight, and hopefully have other opportunities to bring on the conversation. So I leave the floor to Marco Perduca, coordinator of Science for Democracy, for a global perspective on the right to science, but also on the role that the European Union can and should play in cooperation with other international organizations. And we will have potentially time until 8 for our discussion. So I invite the speakers, if they have some highlights from what the others said, to try to come up together with some shared actions, but also all the participants, if you write down in the chat your name, you can take the floor yourself, maybe to pick up on what had been said so far, sharing your perspective, and also try again to activate this political and collective intelligence of citizens take over Europe and this network on what can we do together towards the conference on the future of Europe. So Marco Perduca, then Octavian Lazia, and I keep an eye on the chat to see if someone else wants to add something. Marco Perduca.
Thank you, Virginia. Good afternoon, good evening to all, and thank you for the opportunity and the great work that has been done. I think last time we spoke, we weren't so ready to address some of the public and political issues that have been discussed today or have been discussed in the past with some international document that could have been a good help. And I think now everybody is familiar, of course, with the concept of democracy and the need to allow people to participate in democratic decision-making process. And we can find all the necessary information in the variety of instruments at the universal level in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Economic, on Civil and Political Rights. But there are other elements when it comes to economic, social, and cultural rights, and certainly health is a social issue, and science, it's a cultural issue that can come to the, I wouldn't say the rescue, but certainly to support some of the ideas that have been discussed today and that have been discussed in the past in talking about how the future of Europe can also be influenced or designed by the direct participation of people. And so we're talking about something that is a universally recognized right. And it's not a request that comes from civil society. It's one of the elements of the international rule of law. The rule of law is not only democracy, freedom of speech, administration of justice, it's also economic, social, and cultural right. And so we have to take that into consideration also because we have institutions always speaking about evidence-based policies. And where the evidence is coming from is never clarified, and how decisions should be based on evidence is also not clarified. Now, in May this year, the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights adopted something called a general comment on science, which revolves around Article 15 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And I would like to highlight 3 paragraphs that I think could be very useful to discuss, if not today, in the future, because they try and put together participation, transparency, and science. In particular, paragraph 53 of the general comment states that principles of transparency and participation are essential to make science objective and reliable, and to ensure that it is not subject to interests that are not scientific or that are inconsistent with fundamental human rights principles and the welfare of society. Secrecy and collusion are in principle contrary to the integrity of science. States should take measures to avoid the risks associated with the existence of conflicts of interest by creating an environment in which actual or perceived conflicts of interest are adequately disclosed and regulated, especially those involving scientific researchers who give policy advice to policymakers and other public officials. What was said before about vaccines, I think, is very important. Here we have a situation in which a lot of public money, also from science skeptic governments like the United States under Donald Trump, is being invested in research that is being developed now by the private sector. And so we have to make sure that where public money was used, the public good is in fact allowed. I mean, public, it's a common good that needs to be enjoyed by everybody. There's another paragraph of the general comment on science, which is paragraph 56, that I think is important, that says that participation also includes the right to information and participation in controlling the risks involved in particular scientific processes and its application. And in this context, the precautionary principle plays, of course, an important role. This principle demands that in the absence of full scientific certainty, when an action or policy may lead to unacceptable harm to the public or the environment, actions should be taken to avoid or diminish that harm. Unacceptable harms include harm to humans or to the environment, threatening human life or health, serious and effective, irreversible, inequitable to present or future generation, or imposed without adequate consideration for human rights of those affected. And I think part of the debate about speeding up or accelerating the decision-making process in terms of vaccine has to be looked also through this lens. Then I go back quoting, technological and human rights impact assessment are tools that help to identify potential risk early in the process and the use of scientific applications. But at the same time, the general comment looks at the future, and this is something that we have to keep in mind if we want to foster change that is also evidence-based. Paragraph 57 says the application of the precautionary principle is sometimes controversial, particularly in relation to scientific research itself, as limitation on the freedom of scientific research are compatible with the covenant only in the circumstances set out in Rule Article 4. Article 4 says that no laws should be adopted that go against all the other articles included in the covenant. On the contrary, this principle, the precautionary principle, is more broadly applied for the use and application of scientific outcomes. The precautionary principle should not hinder or prevent scientific progress, which is beneficial for humanity. Nonetheless, it should be able to address available risks for human health and the environment inter alia. Thus, in controversial issues, participation and transparency become crucial because the risks and potential of some technical advances or scientific research should be made public in order to enable society, through informed, transparent, and participatory public deliberation, to decide whether or not the risks are acceptable. So, to conclude, transparency, participation, but also evaluation, assessment are all elements of the right to participate that we should insist should become central in the debate for the future of Europe. Also because they're all ingredients that can help us contribute to the necessary update or upgrade of rules and regulations to govern new phenomena that science has discovered or invented, and the product of scientific research can also inform us not only on science or health-related issues, but also on more public policy issues. And how there are interesting studies now that explore how, in fact, the active role of citizens in the decision-making process can make a difference, and we already have a few examples in some European countries, is also an evidence to take into consideration when decisions are needed and laws are designed and applied. I thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you to Marco Perduca, co-founder of Science for Democracy, and for this additional perspective on what it means evidence-based policy and what it implies in the decision-making process around health. So Professor Coman had to leave us, but I asked her to share with us maybe later on some feedback on how the rule of law can be how it can become another topic of action for the Coalition of Citizens Take Over Europe, for the design of the Conference on the Future of Europe. As I said, we have now some time for some additional discussion. So the first person who has to speak is Octavian Lazia from Humans. So the floor, Octavian, is almost yours, but I invite the other participants to add their name into the chat for any perspective, comment on what had been said so far, ideas on how we can work within this context to carry on some of the matters that have been brought up in the short, mid, and long term. So you can use the chat to add your names. So Octavian.
Hi everyone, this is Octavian from Humans. Thank you, Virginia, for introducing me. It's actually a pity Professor Kuhlman left us because I just wanted to share some thoughts on the rule of law conditionality she was talking about in the very beginning. What I wanted to say is that I took the time to follow a little bit the debate on the rule of law conditionality, and if I got it right, this rule of law conditionality that has just been approved, it's not the best compromise, it's not the best deal we could have hoped for, right? Because if I got it right, the rule of law conditionality will not look at, generalized deficiencies of the rule of law, but rather it will cover only that breaches of the rule of law which directly affect the financial interests of the European Union. So this is to say that if I got it right, this is kind of a weak instrument which is added to the toolbox of the European Union to protect the rule of law. And as citizens and civil society organizations who fight for the rule of law, I think we should try and push for the rule of law issue to be included in the upcoming conference on the future of Europe, and as a way to engage, both to improve the mechanism itself, but also to engage with citizens on this issue. And I think should we do this, I think we should start engaging with citizens and European institutions, starting from the rule of law report, which the European Commission has produced and shared back in September, and possibly also involving the Fundamental Rights Agency. And I mean, I think we should use the rule of law report because it's actually the only tool we have at European Union to assess how member states protect the rule of law. This is the only tool which actually looks at all member states, not just at Poland and Hungary, And even though major rule of law issues and breaches happen in Hungary and Poland, it's also true that the rule of law could be breached and is breached every day in all member states, but maybe in other forms. And here I think maybe the condition in jails in Italy, or rather reproductive rights and fundamental rights more in general in Poland. And if it's true that the rule of law it's all about checks and balances, media freedom and judiciary independence, it's also, I think, at the end of the day, it's about fundamental rights, So yeah, this is, and that in the words of the Commission, and in particular, according to Commissioner Reinders, another goal of this rule of law report is not only to engage a debate in the European institutions, but also to trigger a debate at national level, which is something we didn't really see, in all this decade of fighting for the rule of law. And I think this is important, triggering debate at national level, because I'm just gonna go for this anecdote. Last week I was chatting with my housemate Irene. She's a biological engineer, and she doesn't really care about politics and rule of law issues. And I was trying to explain her all this debate on the rule of law at European level, etc., and so on and so forth. And at a given moment, she just stopped me and asked, "Okay, everything is fine, but what is the rule of law in the end?" So I think we have a very big issue with citizens not really knowing what the wording of the rule of law itself, what it means. So I think we should take advantage of the conference on the future of Europe, both to strengthen the way the European Union protects its values, especially the rule of law, which is the basis of our liberal democracy, but also to engage with citizens on what is the rule of law and what they understand and how they want to protect it in the European Union. So yeah, this is it's a pity that Professor Coman is not here with us anymore, because I would have loved to have one of our inputs on how we could trigger this debate on the rule of law during the conference on the future of Europe. But I guess we're here to discuss this all together. So I would like also to have inputs from other participants if you think that it's worth it and we should actually take up the rule of law issue during the conference on the future of Europe. And Lola, this is my my small. Thank you everyone, and looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you, Octavian, for bringing up the topic. So we have potentially another 30 minutes together. So I will ask to those who didn't speak yet. I also see Tony Venable from ICIT Foundation, who is another great advocate of reforms of the European Union in the context of health. So Tony, of course, feel free to take the floor anytime you want, and is also one of the first organizers of the Council on Participatory Democracy when we started. So for sure he has something to say. I'm trying to collect some bullet points to report to the plenary what we have discussed tonight. And I see that Marco Cappato, for example, is suggesting to start to push for a formal participatory phase for the European Health Union through a petition and a letter to address the European Commissioner for Health and Ursula von der Leyen as a joint statement out of this meeting that we're having tonight. So this is another joint action that we could work together. So I leave some time for any comments, both from the speakers and the other attendees. No pressure.
Virginia, can I say something?
You have to.
I have to, okay. It was mentioned earlier that we had a conference on the 1st and 2nd of December, and one of the sessions was on the rule of law. And I think it kind of stumbled almost by accident onto a huge area of work, which really should be done by this group and others. I take the point mentioned by Marco that the monitoring of the rule of law across the member states is something with which civil society organizations should get involved and try to influence. I think that's very important. But there's a broader agenda here. Should it all be left to an institutional approach, and the sort of tension between the government, between the Commission and the member states, doesn't it really raise issues about how citizens themselves can raise issues of the rule of law? Shouldn't it be possible for a citizen to claim that his EU citizenship status is violated without having to move to another country if authorities in his country violate the rule of law? I mean, there has been some work done on this idea, and the idea that if the national court refuses to refer such an appeal linking EU citizenship to fundamental rights to the European Court, there should be wider access to the European Court for citizens. I think that this is the kind of issue which we should be raising in the conference on the future of Europe, because everything which is being done on the rule of law does open up new opportunities for looking at the rights of citizens to access to justice, including to the European Court of Justice. Another thing I'd like to add just very quickly is that I'm not entirely convinced by a European health union, in the sense that health is such a strong part of the national social contract. It's so important in terms of transfers of resources from taxpayer to the budget. It's such a big electoral issue as well. It's not a given, I think, that citizens will necessarily back a European health union on top of the national health services. I think the chances that they would back that would be if health rights, European health rights existed. And that would be, that would create some obligation by the EU to coordinate its, the member states more effectively, if there was an obligation towards citizens directly in the health area. So we're thinking about a follow-up citizens' initiative to the one that has been very successfully launched on vaccines, to have a European health right law generally for citizens, so that the health union isn't just a top-down affair, right? It's something which would be owned by citizens and can be claimed by citizens with legal rights backing that claim. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And in my opinion, also the point that you raised about the debate that is needed around these topics, also, for example, that you disagree with, or kind of not fully agree on the idea of the European health insurance, I think is one of the reasons why the participatory democracy instrument should be open up for an exchange and a dialogue that is based on evidences, scientific elements, and who are the experts and who are the citizens that discuss these matters, and why the Conference on the Future of Europe should be the space for this type of debate, something that cannot be decided neither in the secret rooms of the Council nor in purely not institutionally hooked debate among citizens and civil society organizations. So probably what we're doing tonight is lay the ground for this type of debate and make sure that it's included into the health is a matter included in the scope of the Conference on the Future of Europe in itself, but also to know each other and create space for this. I see Martina Puk strongly support health rights, fortunately, and Mario is showing again the official European Commission webpage for the European Citizen Initiative on the Right to Cure, which is the European Citizen Initiative that Julie Stendham presented to us. So any other comment and remark for the speakers? Otherwise, I will try to share some bullet points on ideas that we can bring back to the plenary before we close this session and there is time to join. So I don't know if Marco or any one of the other speakers wants to add something, help us to summarize what we discussed tonight. I see Rajesh Khalale hand, so Roger, the floor is yours.
I think Marco wants to come in as well. I don't know when he got. I just wanted to, come back to this point about the centrality of citizens when it comes, and the experience, the lived experience of citizens when it comes to a transformative approach to health. And I'll just tell you a story about a man who went to see his doctor. He said, "Doctor, is it true that you can tell me how to be 100 years old, how to live to 100 years old?" And the doctor said, "Yes." He said, "Well, doctor, what is it that I should do?" He said, "Well, you need to give up smoking, and you need to give up drinking, and you need to go to the gym every day." And the man said, "Really?" He said, "Is it true that if I do all of those things, I will live to be 100 years old. And the doctor said, well, I can't guarantee that you will be 100 years old, but it will seem like living to be 100 years old. And the reason I tell you this joke, really, I mean, is that it really does come down to, Vitensis and Violetta, we've all been talking about the citizens. Paul, my colleague from Aarhus, has had to leave, unfortunately. He goes to the gym every day. He has a group of people who get together and they meet together, and it's a social thing, it's an active thing. These citizens are doing things for European health. They are reducing the risk of the need to access healthcare. And I think a small change in the way that we behave, and let's remember, we've been asking for huge changes in the way that citizens behave during the pandemic in the interests of public health. When the pandemic is over, where is the consensus going to come from? At a mass level, I'm not talking about individual level, for changes in behavior of citizens that are going to have a dramatic impact on the organisation of healthcare. And just to answer Violetta's question about brilliant question about why should a transport commissioner be interested in health? The answer to that is very clear from the pandemic. We have members, we have Iris, a member of New Europeans, who lives in Arkin and works in Maastricht and travels 20 kilometers to work every day, but she hasn't been able to go to work because she's the wrong side of the border. We've seen people in Alsace-Lorraine dying because the Europe bridge across the Rhine between Strasbourg and Kehl was closed. I mean, it opened again in the end, but they had to bring people over by helicopters. We need to understand that Europe is transnational regions that work together, regional, the Baden-Württemberg and Alsace-Lorraine. And that's a transport issue and a health issue, an issue about access. So certainly we want to have the Transport Commissioner at the table when it comes to talking about health resilience in the face of pandemics. And I think that is one of the lessons that we need to learn. And if I may, just to repeat the 3 asks from our organisation, just to go to your concluding points, Virginia. I mean, number one, we do want to make sure that the Future of Europe conference has an element that is about health. And I think Tony said, well, are citizens interested in healthcare and European health? Well, the thing is, they are. That's certainly what the latest Eurobarometer shows. Strongly interested in that. They're also interested, by the way, in universal basic income. And poverty is another thing that drives very poor health outcomes and health inequalities. So we need to think about that too. We need to think about a universal basic income as an instrument of improving Europeans' health post-pandemic. They're much more interested in European universal income, much more interested in European Health Union than they were a year ago because of the pandemic. So we need to grasp this opportunity. So let's have health as an element of the Future of Europe conference. Let's, number 2, have that the global summit, when it does take place next year before the next G20, let's make sure there's a civil society chapter in there. Let's lobby for that, as well as for Vitensis and Violetta's manifesto and other things. Let's make sure that we put some pressure, there. And let's think about our citizenship as Europeans and health as a component of that. And let's all think, all of us, tell stories, tell us stories, tell us as citizens, reflect on your own lives and your communities. We've opened at New Europeans a dedicated email line called healthunion@neweuropeans.net. And we've also got a statement out today in relation to this event, explaining, I don't go too much into detail, what we've been doing the last 9 months, what we're planning to do in the future, where you can find more detail. Tell us your stories. Tell the stories about what you're doing to take care of your health, what your friends and family, what your community are doing, what your local authority is doing to protect the health, public health, the community's health. Tell the stories. Tell the stories. Tell us what it is as citizens that the authorities need to do, the changes they need to make it easier for you to look after your own health and the health of others. Healthunion@neweuropeans.net. But most of all, we're here to respond positively and constructively to all the excellent work that's going on. And whether it's through our social media or our networks, whatever it is, we're at your disposal. Virginia and Marco, thank you for convening this. And we're very happy to help and engage and support all the different initiatives that we've been hearing about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger, for some concrete and actionable proposals. For the helpline, maybe we should take some time before coming up with a formal launch, because then we need to manage it as well. So, but I think maybe it's a concept to build upon. I see Oreste Gallo wants to speak, and also Marco Cappato, I think.
Good evening to everyone. And thank you very much to Virginia and to everybody else and Marco to put together this initiative, because it's very powerful. For those who don't know me, I'm very interested in trying to bring the Stop Global Warming initiative into the work of into the sphere of production and workers. And it's very, very hard and very difficult, because there is a lot of resistance coming from trade unions and employers as well, for different reasons. I mean, the trade unions for the fear that the carbon tax will increase unemployment, employers because they see it as an increase in costs. So it makes it very difficult. However, in trying to reach to workers directly as the main agent that needs to take action and decisions, I think that putting together the different initiatives, Stop Global Warming, the Right to Cure, and others who are related to health in a very broad sense, health of human beings and health of the environment and the globe where we live, I think could be quite powerful. It could increase the chances to break through the resistance of trade unions and employers association, which really make a block, which prevent from bringing these initiatives to the decision level. So that I think it might take on from this discussion tonight, because I think that if we pull together all the different initiatives, the platform could be much more powerful. And I'm very glad to have learned about the Right to Cure initiatives. I'm definitely going to read it tonight and sign, because I think it's the content is very, very right. So I think that putting together the different initiatives, we can be much more effective and much more powerful in breaking away with the obstacles on the way to change. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Oreste Gallo. You got some virtual applause from Roger as well. And also I get this chance before leaving the floor to Marco Cappato to mention that the Citizens Takeover Europe Coalition is open to other organizations. So you can write us as soon as the event is finished, after the plenary in the next days, if you want to know more about how this coalition specifically work. And then after Marco, we will try to put together the bullet points for what we bring as our Council on Participatory Democracy session to the plenary for the actions that can be shared within the coalition, so that we have some things to do. Marco Cappato.
Thank you, Virginia. No, I just wanted to underscore what Oreste just said. There are many issues on the table. It's very important if we harmonize and unite the various requests in a coherent platform. This I think is especially important, and also this idea of having a citizens participatory phase for the creation of a European Health Union, as Violetta Bulc just said, I think is a path that we can follow together, raising the issue together, because this is really very important. In general, maybe we can think about how this citizens-led conference on the future of union Nicola Milanese was talking about could have a general debate, but also specific link to some issues that are already in the agenda of the European Commission. So both things are important, to have an overall discussion and to have specific thematic issues. Thank you.
Thanks to Marco Cappato. Julie, remember us careful not to define as a sum, as a sum of individual actions, but indeed as impacted by all policies. Making and explaining this link based on concrete example is crucial to explain why more EU attention on health is important. Personally, I believe these moments are the moment where different action comes together, and then we find the lines that keeps us together, and maybe also reinforce the instruments that help us then to achieve the specific. I mean, I think the approach is to create as many of these moments as possible and see where the matters and the policies, political reforms goes together. So to try to summarize some ideas so that you all know what I'm gonna share within the plenary. I think one input is also on the rule of law element and discussing within Citizens Takeover Europe how the rule of law matter should be part of the discussion of the Conference on the Future of Europe, of the scope of the Conference on the Future of Europe. In general, I think we all agree on the fact that there is a need of a formal participatory democracy, participatory phase around the European Health Union within the Conference on the Future of Europe and before and toward the Conference on the Future of Europe, potentially starting with a joint action, petition, open letter to address also the current Health Commissioner and Ursula von der Leyen. Connect the matter of European citizenship with the right to health with an holistic approach, but also creating spaces where citizens, experts can interact on the matter transparently with a clear feedback loop. And so I think we also all can agree on the need to relaunch the work that Citizens Takeover Europe already did on the design of the Conference on the Future of Europe, the push for its immediate start, and the transparency and the feedback loop again of the Conference on the Future of Europe in itself. I think these points are vague enough to give us space for being more detailed in next appointments and having such a platform within the Citizens Takeover Coalition, but also within the networks that all of us are part of. If no one wants to leave the table after this brief summary, probably the additional element is the importance of information around participatory democracy instruments. Without information, everything we do will never have the same power of the more traditional type of politics. So I think working together on more information for citizens on all the instruments available should be also foundation of what we do. Any other comment? That's the good time. Otherwise, we can have a 10 minutes, either a trip into breakout room B for Citizen Assembly and breakout room C for media and participatory democracy. Otherwise, we meet into the main room at 8 p.m. for the final remarks and summary from the different sessions. I think this is quite important to have a big picture, and also for a brief presentation on the next appointment that will be on the 13th and 14th of January, where there will be more space for elaboration on different matters, but also we are trying to organize a special moment with a self-organized public hearing about this petition that we discussed that was officially presented to the European Parliament. And I think that could be also a good moment of pressure from the citizens toward the European institutions, or also supporting the European Parliament as which is the more transparent of the three EU institutions somehow. So I think it's worth to have a bridge with the European Parliament for everything that we do. So thanks everyone for the time, for the concentration and the focus, and hopefully for the work that we can do together from tonight on. Thanks a lot. See you in the plenary.
Thank you. Grazie. Ciao.
Hello, hello.
Hello. I will leave you for 5 minutes just to
Sure, of course.
and this kind of basic fundamental rights, but it was good. How are you, Sundus?
Good.
Okay, see you in a bit.
Yeah, see you in a bit. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your session. Well, enjoyed the fruitful and deep thinking that was going on there. We'll just be moving to the conclusions at 8 p.m. So if you could just bear with us a few more minutes. Thank you. Yes. So the other sessions are closing. So in a few minutes, we'll move with the conclusions. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you've had breakout sessions and good talks.